My dream wedding turned nightmare when my betrayal played on the big screen for everyone. Hi, Heartbreak Confessions fans. In today's video, we recount a heart-stopping tale of heartbreak and resilience. As we explore the emotional journey of our storyteller, remember that you're not alone. Every heartbreak has a story worth telling. I am reeling from the shock of his discovery only 2 weeks before our wedding and the way he sought his retribution on the most significant day of my life. Imagine standing alone at the altar, tears streaming down your cheeks, clutching a bouquet of flowers, utterly bewildered. That weighty sense of anguish, longing, and a tumult of emotions crashed into me like an overwhelming tide. In a single day, my world turned upside down. But before you cast pity my way, let me confess, the fault lies squarely with me. I should have foreseen it, yet the allure of excitement overshadowed the truth. The events unfolded weeks ago, yet I still carry the heavy burden of those feelings, intertwined with regret. Greetings, dear readers. I'm Clara, a 24-year-old woman with a heart weighed down by a tale of betrayal that culminated in my solitude on what should have been my wedding day. Grab a comfy seat. This story is lengthy, but I assure you, it's worth the wait. Growing up as an only child in a modest household, we often struggled to make ends meet. Meals were a rarity, let alone luxuries like rent. I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to middle school due to my academic gifts. Yet, when I returned home each day, I often found myself juggling chores, particularly helping my mother. My father worked as a chauffeur for an affluent local family, and my mother served as their maid. Although I felt ashamed of their occupations, I had no choice but to accept our circumstances. As high school approached, I again secured a prestigious scholarship, but found the social landscape daunting. My peers segregated themselves by wealth: upper class, middle class, and, unfortunately, lower class, a category I was stamped into due to my scholarships and my family's financial standing. Despite my enthusiasm for extracurricular activities, my social status barred my entry. Hence, I chose to fade into the background during my senior year, and as graduation came, I was met with further disappointment. With no means to attend college, I began working as a sales assistant at a local clothing store where fate eventually introduced me to David. It was my first night shift when a demanding customer entered, insisting on one of our most exquisite designs. I assisted her in selecting pieces and informed her of our exclusive delivery option. She readily provided her address, handing me her credit card. In an unfortunate twist, the card slipped from her fingers and fell. What followed was an explosion of fury directed at me. I stood there, my apologies echoing in the silence, while others merely observed my humiliation. David, on the other hand, couldn't stand by. He intervened, delivering a sharp rebuke to the woman, making her retreat in embarrassment, vowing she would never return. I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for his intervention. His kindness didn't stop there. He urged me to find my voice and assert myself. He introduced himself, casually mentioning his thriving real estate business. From that moment, our connection blossomed. He often visited the shop, sometimes waiting for my shifts to end, and offered me rides home. I confided in him about my struggles to attend college due to my family's financial state. Moved by my story, he graciously offered to cover my tuition. With his support, I thrived through 4 years of college. On graduation night, I found myself at David's birthday celebration. Overcome with joy and pride, I was caught off guard by his captivated gaze, showering me with compliments about my appearance. In a moment filled with both excitement and hesitation, David asked me to be his girlfriend. Against my better judgment, I surrendered to the feelings swelling within me, sealing the moment with a kiss as we stood beneath the twinkling lights. In the midst of this whirlwind romance, however, lurked the shadows of my past choices, which would soon surface in the most devastating fashion. One afternoon, as David planned our wedding, I found myself engulfed in confusion while sharing a quiet moment with Jason, whose easy laughter stirred something within me I had yet to understand. Our bond deepened inexplicably, a flirtation woven with secrets, leaving me at a crossroads as wedding preparations sped ahead. And so, my journey towards that fateful wedding day continued, a mix of hope, betrayal, and the haunting question of who I truly wanted to be. I embarked on a quest for a job, eager to dive into the world of interviews. However, David dashed my hopes, insisting I join him at his thriving real estate firm, where he desperately needed an assistant to help manage his demanding workload. It felt like the perfect opportunity for both of us, so I started working alongside him right away. In the office, David shared his space with his business partner, Jason, who co-owned the company. When David introduced us, I felt an immediate connection with Jason. His charming demeanor was infectious, and I was soon collaborating with both men. Things were seemingly perfect at work and in my life, until changes began to unfold. Before long, David became increasingly distant, consumed by his ambitious pursuits and countless obligations. Jason, ever observant, must have sensed a shift. He often casually nudged the conversation toward my well-being, trying to gauge what was wrong, but I remained tight-lipped. He seemed to understand my need for space, refraining from pressing me too hard about my struggles. Yet, it only deepened the isolation I felt. The turning point came swiftly and unexpectedly. I found myself entangled in an affair with Jason, the very man who'd started as just a co-worker and friend. He exuded kindness, easily making everyone around him feel at ease with his warm smile and effortless charm. Our friendship grew naturally. He was always the first to greet me upon arriving into the office, but it wasn't until David formally introduced us that I learned of their long-standing bond. As I returned Jason's smile, an unspoken connection sparked between us. During moments when David would whisk away for business trips, it was often just Jason and me left in the office, exchanging casual greetings that had begun to unravel into deeper conversations. What started as innocent camaraderie slowly shifted tone. Our exchanges fluttered between friendly banter and flirtation. The change turned more intense following one of David's abrupt business trips, where he hastily left to finalize a property deal that he could easily have delegated to someone else. Alone in the office afterward, I felt a rush of frustration, pouring myself into work to outrun the emotional void, but it was futile. Eventually, I needed a release. I decided to escape the confines of the office and seek solace at a local cafe filled with familiar faces, an inviting retreat from my solitude. Thoughts raced through my mind, and as I scanned for someone to confide in, it hit me painfully that I truly had very few friends. The cafe buzzed with chatter, and I ordered drink after drink, hoping to drown my growing despair in a sea of warmth. Just as I began to lose myself in the haze of intoxication, I was jolted back to reality by a voice calling my name. I glanced up to see Jason, his expression shifting between concern and genuine care. Perhaps the alcohol blurred my perception, but I felt an undeniable spark between us. "Are you all right?" he inquired, an edge of worry in his tone. I merely smiled and nodded, taking another shot as if to shield myself from the truth. Before I could down another, Jason gently took the glass from my hand. "I think that's enough for now. You seem to be reaching your limit," he cautioned, his brow furrowed with earnestness. I protested, but it was half-hearted. The alcohol had overwhelmed my senses, and I felt the walls closing in. "Just let me be," I snapped, but he held my hand softly, an anchor amid my turmoil. In that moment, my body craved closeness, as it had been ages since David and I had shared real intimacy. Rather than retreat, Jason inched closer, sitting beside me as we shared drinks. "What's really bothering you?" he asked with gentle curiosity. My initial instinct was to maintain my silence, but the floodgates opened, bursting forth words that had long lay unvoiced. I confided in him about David's constant absence and the pervasive loneliness that had seeped into my life like an unwelcome shadow. Jason listened, his gaze unwavering and sympathetic. "I get it. It's tough. When David returns from his trip, I'll talk to him about this," he offered, yet his words made my heart constrict. I ached to voice my reluctance, but my thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. Instead, I remained silent, bound in the tug-of-war between guilt and the flicker of desire that Jason stirred within me. I continued to nurse my drink, feeling the warmth wrap around me like a comforting blanket until Jason noticed my swaying. He stepped in, gently placing a hand on my shoulder to steady me. "I think it's time for you to head home," he said, with a teasing tone, but the concern in his eyes told another story. I resisted, mumbling that I could manage on my own. I pushed myself off the bar stool, wobbling for balance, and Jason chuckled as he swiftly caught me before I could topple. "If you try driving like this, you'll either end up in a ditch or worse," he quipped, sighing, likely relieved that he had only sipped sparingly that evening. With a roll of his eyes, he took my keys and insisted on driving me back home. The night air was crisp as we stepped out of the cafe and into Jason's car, a weathered hatchback that had seen better days. It was filled with a familiar scent of pine from air fresheners, mixed with the aura of countless late-night drives. Upon arriving, he helped me to my feet, and instead of letting go, I wrapped my arms around him, feeling an intense need for closeness. I didn't want him to leave just yet. The impulse to connect overwhelmed my better judgment, and before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and pressed my lips against his. To my surprise, Jason didn't pull away. Instead, he responded with a passionate kiss that ignited something deep within me, a feeling that was intoxicating beyond measure. The world faded away, and suddenly the two of us were tangled together, our clothes forgotten as we lost ourselves in the moment. When daylight arrived, I woke up wrapped in sheets, my heart pounding at the remnants of the previous night. Everything felt surreal, almost dreamlike, and guilt coiled in my stomach. But oddly, I didn't feel remorseful. If anything, I craved more of the connection Jason had given me, something that seemed absent with David, who had become absorbed in his hustle and devoid of affection for quite some time. Jason, however, wore a mask of guilt. "I can't believe I just did that to David," he confessed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We should tell him," but I shook my head fiercely, urging him to let it go. "It's not your fault. David's too caught up in his work to notice what I've been missing." My indifference surprised even me. How could I dismiss the weight of my betrayal so easily? As days turned into weeks, my attraction to Jason only intensified. Yet his distance grew palpable, and though I yearned for his company, he began dodging my calls and texts, leaving me confused and frustrated. Then, one fateful afternoon, David surprised me with a lunch date at a cozy cafe adorned with vintage decor, where rich aromas of coffee filled the air. He looked unusually nervous, and before I could finish my salad, he took my hand with an earnest look in his eyes, slipped a ring onto my finger, and announced his proposal. Claps and cheers erupted around us, filling the moment with a sense of fairy tale magic. Yet, as I stared down at the sparkling ring, my heart was suddenly gripped by conflict, and my phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message from Jason. My heart leapt as I glimpsed the screen, an excitement coursing through me that I couldn't shake off, despite the exhilaration of the moment. But then David's confused gaze met mine, a flicker of uncertainty clouding his expression. When he inquired about my text, I feigned nonchalance, downplaying it as a message from a friend. I reeled at the prick of guilt, as I knew how he yearned for intimacy, and yet here I was, spinning lies. As night fell, while David lay in deep slumber, I crept out of the house, heart racing with a mix of thrill and trepidation, heading toward a rustic cabin nestled in the woods where Jason awaited. The journey felt surreal. Leaving behind my life for fleeting moments of passion felt like a crime. When I arrived, Jason pulled me close, his eyes reflecting the guilt he harbored. "I shouldn't be doing this," he murmured, but I pressed a finger against his lips to silence him. "We have this thing, don't we? I need you." His hesitation faded as our lips met again, this time with a fervor that promised reprieve from the hollow spaces our real lives had created. In that stolen moment, the lines between right and wrong blurred, and I craved this exhilarating escape from the choices that haunted me. I spent a mere 2 hours with Jason before retreating back to my home, and miraculously, David remained asleep the entire time. I was acutely aware of the danger this entailed. I needed new alibis if I wanted to sneak away and rendezvous with Jason. It would be disingenuous to claim I didn't have feelings for David. If pressed, I would choose him again. Yet, Jason was an ephemeral thrill, and I reveled in the stolen moments we shared. The wedding preparations had commenced at a feverish pace, scheduled just 2 months away. I tried to persuade David to delay it a bit. 3 months seemed more manageable, but he was insistent, eager to make me his wife. Little did he know my only real concern was the secret betrayal brewing just beneath the surface. Despite the gnawing anxiety, I forged ahead, crafting more excuses to indulge in my meetings with Jason. He was stricken by guilt over our entanglement, often avoiding me, but I cleverly manipulated our wedding planner's schedule to create believable reasons for seeing him. Cake tastings, fitting appointments, and floral arrangements became my stealthy cover. 2 weeks before the big day, I went for my final dress fitting, a seemingly innocuous appointment that doubled as my escape route. As soon as I slipped out of the bridal shop, I headed to a rustic cabin nestled in the woods where Jason and I had planned to meet. That day, we reveled in one another's company, intoxicated by forbidden passion, and surrendered to our desires once more. He questioned whether I felt any remorse for our actions. "Not an ounce," I confessed with a gleam of mischief in my eye. "You make me feel alive, unlike the life I share with David, which is tethered solely to financial gain." The thrill of deceit was exhilarating. Everything felt perfectly orchestrated. I was balancing a perfect equation, my needs met by Jason's desires, while David provided the financial stability I craved. I believed David was blissfully ignorant, completely blind to the emotional schism in our relationship, but fate had other plans. The wedding day dawned, and I awoke with a mixture of glee and trepidation. It was the day I had long counted down to. I indulged in a long, hot bath, treating myself with luxurious lotions and an extravagant perfume. After meticulously styling my hair into soft waves that cascaded around my shoulders, I adorned myself in a breathtaking long white gown, the fabric shimmering with pearls that encircled the waist and neckline. Arriving at the historical mansion, the air was fragrant with fresh flowers. I felt a flutter of nervousness when I discovered that David was not yet present. As panic clawed at my insides, I steadied myself when he arrived moments later, striding in with effortless poise. Clad in a sleek tuxedo, he was the picture of elegance and charm, effortlessly drawing my gaze. As he neared, he leaned in close, and whispered sweetly, "You look stunning." A rush of warmth flushed through me at his words. The ceremony began swiftly, and when it came time for vows, his voice broke momentarily with emotion. He turned his gaze toward me, articulating the heartfelt promises that made my heart soar, until he paused and announced he had a surprise. I smiled innocently, envisioning a romantic gesture, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. David commanded everyone's attention with a booming voice, acknowledging our parents and his closest friends. He reminisced about our serendipitous meeting and our journey, basking in the spotlight. Then came the moment that shattered my world. "I have a video to share," he declared, gesturing behind him. Suddenly, a large screen illuminated, casting a glow of dread over my heart. The vivid images of my last clandestine encounter with Jason materialized on the screen. I stood frozen, my breath hitching in disbelief as the gasps of the crowd reverberated around me, the faces of my family reflecting a tide of disgust and disappointment. No words escaped my lips. I was ensnared in a web of horror, the truth laid bare before all. In a heavy silence that followed, David's expression morphed from hurt to betrayal. "I trusted you implicitly," he said, his voice cold but wounded. "You shattered that trust 2 weeks ago with your reckless decisions." My heart raced. It became evident that Jason, overwhelmed by guilt, had chosen honesty over loyalty, revealing our affair to David, a betrayal of his own. With the solemn assembly departing in disgust, I was left alone in the remnants of my shattered dreams, forced to reckon with the devastating aftermath of choices I had made. Choices that blurred the lines between love, regret, and the longing for acceptance. This transpired while I was in the office, and they were engaged in a property inspection. At first, David's reaction to Jason's involvement was one of disbelief and righteous anger. But as the truth unraveled, that I was the one who had drawn him in, I could see the weight of his hurt shifting onto Jason. His emotions were still a tangled mess. He couldn't entirely absolve his friend, yet there was a sense of relief that Jason had finally made a confession. Just then, Jason handed David a recording he had surreptitiously taken during our last clandestine encounter, a shocking moment encapsulated in an audio file, including me declaring I would only marry David for his fortune. A chill ran down my spine as I absorbed this revelation and gazed at Jason with mouth agape, disbelief etched on my features. He averted his gaze and exited without another word. I couldn't fathom that he would betray me like this, but deep down, I recognized the truth in every word spoken. With this undeniable betrayal weighing him down, David stormed away, his heart visibly fractured. I found myself abandoned at the altar, tears streaming down my cheeks as realization dawned on me. I had acted foolishly, causing unnecessary pain. As the minutes drifted by in crushing silence, I eventually fled and made my way back to David's family estate, desperate to plead for his forgiveness. I could not bear the thought of losing all I had just begun to build with him, but my heart sank when I discovered he wasn't home. I waited in vain, wrestling with the guilt that gnawed at my insides, knowing that I was the architect of this broken friendship. Later that evening, amidst my internal turmoil, David finally returned. Without hesitation, I sank to my knees, utterly disregarding my pride, begging for a fresh start. But his face was taut with anguish as he explained that the remnants of my infidelity were far too much to overlook, particularly with his closest friend involved. "You've shattered my trust," he declared, his voice tremulous with pain. I felt my resolve crumble, tears falling onto his shoes as I gripped his ankles, pleading desperately for a second chance. He lifted me gently, his voice softening only to convey the depth of his hurt. "I love you, but I cannot offer you anything more." You must leave." My heart fractured further as I retreated in humiliation, contemplating the aftermath of my actions, ultimately deciding that perhaps a conversation with Jason would provide a glimmer of hope. Upon reaching Jason's apartment, I confronted him, my emotions bubbling over. "How could you betray me like that?" I demanded, searching for some semblance of understanding. He simply shook his head in disdain and responded, "Do you hear yourself? This is beyond selfishness." His stark honesty struck a nerve, leaving me momentarily speechless. "Can't we return to how things were?" I pleaded, my desperation palpable. But he dismissed me, urging that I focus on self-improvement instead. "You've lost your way," he said with a tone of finality, "and you should never try to contact either of us again." In the wake of my loss, I was terminated from my job and instructed not to reach out to David, for he had already informed Jason to convey that he wanted nothing to do with me. My belongings were to be sent to my parents' home at his request. The weight of that betrayal felt like daggers piercing my heart, an agony I could scarcely endure. David asserted that I should leave his space, slamming the door behind me. As I stumbled toward the elevator, those cold words reverberated in my mind, and the overwhelming despair led me to faint right there in the corridor. When consciousness returned, I found myself in a sterile hospital room, disoriented, but relieved to see David by my side. Hope flickered briefly, believing perhaps he had come around. But the words that tumbled from his lips crushed any semblance of optimism. "I'm here out of obligation," he explained flatly, revealing that he was contacted by whoever had found me and that my emergency contact was saved in his phone. With that, he walked out of my life, leaving nothing but echoes of his rejection behind. After I got back on my feet, I returned to my small, dimly lit apartment, only to be met with cold dismissal from my parents. "You're an adult now," they declared, their voices laced with a stern resolve that offered no room for discussion. The truth weighed heavily in the air. My parents were ashamed. They were terrified that the whispers of my indiscretions might taint their reputations, spreading like wildfire through their workplaces. Feeling utterly abandoned, I found myself without a single haven to turn to, and my wallet was as empty as my heart, a result of my reckless spending on fashionable clothes, trendy shoes, and an array of trivial items that offered fleeting satisfaction. In desperation, I began selling off my meager possessions. Each discarded item was a reminder of my once cherished aspirations turned sour. With the money I scraped together, I secured a modest and aging apartment, its peeling walls a perfect reflection of my shattered state. Alone in that unwelcoming space, shame wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, suffocating any flicker of hope. The weight of my choices pressed down hard. I was acutely aware of the monumental blunder I'd committed, and the reckoning was inevitable. Ultimately, I was left in a landscape of sorrow and regret, mourning the loss of my husband, the alienation from my family, and the disintegration of my self-respect, all for a fleeting moment of reckless passion. I knew deep within me that the harm was irreparable, and I couldn't erase the trails of chaos I had carved. I swore to myself, in a voice rich with anguish, that I would never tread that destructive path again. But even as that promise formed, doubt clouded my mind. Was it too late? As I lay on the threadbare mattress in that lonely apartment, my heart heavy with the burdens of remorse, I came to a chilling realization. Some transgressions tainted by betrayal burrow deep within one's soul, resistant to the salve of forgiveness. The devastation I had wrought shattered not only my own dreams, but the dreams of those I loved most. With every passing moment, I felt the stigma of my actions tighten its grip, reminding me that the scars of infidelity don't just fade, they linger. In that moment of clarity, I became an unwilling sage of wisdom, echoing a warning to anyone who would listen. Don't make the same mistakes I did. The price is dire. It can lead you down a path of ruin, one far darker than where I find myself now. A path where the consequences can haunt you for eternity, or worse, destroy everything you hold dear. We appreciate your support and hope this story has touched your heart. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating Eita tales. Until next time.